Welcome to the Unconventional Path, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Stories and Ideas. Hi, I'm Bela and Musits.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Hey, Mike, today we have a very interesting guest on the podcast. His name is Vi Wickham. Vi is the founder of Wizard of Ads Online, which helps companies establish and implement their digital marketing strategy. And he is also the 5-time Colorado State Fiddling Champion and 3-time National Fiddle Contest runner-up.
Fiddling. Bela, sounds interesting. I think listeners are going to want to pay attention for some really good principles to follow with digital marketing for smart startups or any kind of small business. And also, as you might imagine, some great stories and lessons about the power of music.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mike. So let's jump right into the interview. Hello, Vi. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Bela. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, sure. Hey, so let me ask you a question, because when I read your background, I was like, wow, this is fascinating. So if you're at a social event, and it's like a social event where people don't know you, they don't know what you do, and you get introduced to somebody, and after that introduction, they say to you, oh, very nice to meet you, Vi. What do you do? How do you answer that question?
Well, I usually answer with some sort of combination of I'm a web developer and digital marketer by trade, but as a result, I get to be a musician as well.
Yeah, great answer. So I want to dive into both of those things, but let's start with the digital marketer. So there's a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to this podcast, small business owners, and sometimes, as I like to put it, when I got out of grad school, if I would have started a business, there was only 2 places I needed to advertise: the local newspaper and the yellow pages.
Sure.
And it was pretty simple.
Yeah.
And now it's like very complex. So
absolutely.
What are sort of what are Vi's 3 big tips for a small to medium-sized business owner on sort of doing this the right way?
So the first thing you've got to do is have a solid foundation online. So that means you've got to have a website, because your website's your home. Like, that's your home base. And if you don't have a good website with clear communication, you're really starting off on the wrong foot. And when I say clear communication, as an example, I have my friend's the executive director of a local charity who takes care of children in difficult situations. And when I started helping them on their website, I went to their website, and it wasn't a terrible looking website. It wasn't a great looking website, but the real problem was I couldn't figure out what they did. I read the website and I'm like, I really have no idea what this charity does. And the same thing is true with a lot of businesses, that they'll use a bunch of insider language, a bunch of techno mumbo jumbo, and it's not anything that actually communicates clearly to their potential clients. So clear communication that communicates who you really are as a company is super, super important in that website. And so once you've got a website that really communicates who you are and what you do, and has that cohesive voice that you really want to convey to attract the customers you want and repel the people you don't want as customers, then you need to get that message out there. And the first step to that is local search submissions, which is really a basic thing to do. And there's a number of services that do this, but the idea is there are hundreds of business directories on the internet, and there are a handful of companies that will put your business out onto all those services. And if you're a local business serving local people, whether that's through products or services, that gives you a firm foundation of reputation that you exist in the world. So Google's looking for, where else do you exist outside your website? Google doesn't see your website and say, oh, they are a company that's doing business in this town and they're doing lots of things. Google sees this website and says, I don't know if they're real or not. Where's
Yeah.
the proof on the internet that shows that this is a real company that deserves to show up in this town? And so that local search submissions, local search marketing element kind of lays that next layer of foundation. And that's really, really important, is that you have another layer of credibility. And I would say the third element would be, those specific sites that are, need that special attention, that are also third-party sites, which would be your Google business profile would be the biggest one, because, if you're a local business, because Google's the 500-pound gorilla. Let's be honest. If, Google controls 90% plus of the search traffic on the internet, and if you're not playing in the Google sandbox, you're missing out on most of the opportunity. And then, like you would look at things like Facebook or Yelp or Bing, Microsoft local business profile as kind of the next tier under that. Apple's also trying to get into that game, but they're having a shaky start on trying to establish themselves in that area. But, I think those would be my first three for getting off on the right foot. Setting a good
that's
foundation.
great. That's great. So the first one you talked about, which is being able to explain what you do.
Yeah.
When I was a professor in teaching entrepreneurship, one of the things I always used to say, particularly to engineers
Mhm.
who were starting a business,
Yeah.
was, okay, pretend I'm your grandfather.
Yeah.
Explain your business to your grandfather.
That's great. Yeah. That's a great way to do it.
Right. So what you just talked about there is there's both a strategic element to that,
Mhm.
and then there's what I would describe as a wordsmithing or picking the right words element to
For
it.
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so talk about those two and how companies should approach that and look at it.
So the way I think about it is that you need to know what your message is and who you are first, because if you don't know who you are, it's like putting lipstick on a pig. You've got to have a solid message, and you have to communicate that message clearly. So if I first have to know what my message is, and I have to know who I am and what I care about. So I look at that as, if I want to be interesting to the world, I need to be an interesting character, which usually happens by looking at myself and in the mirror and saying, what are the pieces that make me interesting? What are the pieces that make me vulnerable? What are the things that people admire in me? And what are the things that allow people to relate to me? And that vulnerability is the only way you get relation. If I'm not vulnerable, I can't, nobody wants to connect to me. If I'm so full of myself that I think I have no flaws, like, nobody wants to be my friend. That guy's kind of a jerk.
Right. So what you just described, at least to me, sounds like something I could not do without assistance. I need a third party to
It helps.
to sort of to talk to me about this and say,
Sure.
no, Bela, you're full of crap on that.
Yeah.
You may think you look like that, but you don't.
Mhm.
So I think, is that one of the elements of what your business does?
So that is one of the things we do at Wizard of Ads, is help what we call an uncovery. We uncover what the authentic story is that a business owner or a business has to tell, and then we help them tell that. So a lot of marketing agencies look for, what can we say about you that people want to hear? But
Yes.
that doesn't work if it's not authentic to what the business and the business owner really are. If you have a disconnect between what people expect and what they get, that's the kind of marketing that will drive you out of business before you know it. Really, that is not
Yes.
what we ever try to do.
Yes.
And if it happens that somebody misrepresented themselves to us when we did the uncovery, you end up with, maybe things work for a year or two, but people get hip to that,
Yes.
just because it's a great story that we're telling. If it's not a true story, it's not going to work in the long run. And I only
Right.
believe playing games that are long run games.
So as you were saying that, there's a law firm, personal injury law firm, that advertises up where I live.
Uh-huh.
And they have the main attorney as the
Sure.
predominant spokesman. And whoever they use, after you watch 2 or 3 of those ads, you feel like you know that person.
Sure.
There's this connection that develops because he talks about his family, he talks about himself, etc. So that's sort of one approach. The other approach that some kind of companies take is it's very sterile.
Sure.
They don't take any sort of personal connection. They want you to connect maybe with the company and the organization, but not with any individual. Do you have thoughts on those 2 different approaches?
Well, I believe we're a relational marketing company. And so I believe that the path to create the most connection and to become the brand people know, like, and trust is to have that personal connection between in your marketing messaging. So if I try to be sterile, that creates something that's dry and sounds like ad speak. It creates something that people identify as an ad. And what you really want is to put out your message in a way that people are like, oh, if I ever have that problem, or if ever I need that thing that they sell, those are the guys I want to go to. Those are the people who are the people I trust, who I think are good people, who I think will care about me. That's the messaging that works in the long run. Because if all you want to do is sell, again, nobody wants to be around you.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if let's say I have a business and I'm doing a pretty new business, I'm doing 100,000 a year in sales, so not a lot of money.
Okay.
I have another business that's doing maybe $1 million, and then there's a third example. I'm doing 5 million a year or 10 million. Is there differences in my approach and what I should be focused on?
So yes and no. I still believe that in the long run, the strategic approach that connects to the culture of who you really are is fundamentally the same, but the tactics and the plan of attack are likely different, just because of the amount of assets you have to attack the problem with. If you only have $100,000 in revenue, there's no way you're buying radio ad schedules or TV ad schedules. But if you're a $5 million company, yeah, that's within reach. You could absolutely be spending 10% of your revenue on radio or TV and doing that successfully. And, so you could even do a split of 5% of your revenue goes to a branding media, and the other 5% goes to more of a direct response media like Google ads or that kind of thing. But you can't do that at $100,000. At $100,000, you have to be scrappy, and you have to figure out, like, what is it that's going to really work where, I'm a $100,000 business. I have more time than I have money. So I'm going to use some shoe leather on the pavement to, go meet the newspaper reporter and, become their friend and get them to write an article about me. And I'm going to do whatever I can do. I'm going to go, partner with the local coffee shop and see, if they can carry the Vi Wickham branded muffin, like whatever I can do that's going to be creative and fun, that's going to be cheap, because I don't have the money. Investing $1,000 a month in ads, isn't going to get you anything.
Right. So if you think about newspapers, TV, radio, the internet, how do you sort of mix and match those, or how do you sort of figure out which one should I focus on, or do I need to do all of them? And if I do all of them, what percentages? How do you sort of make that balance?
Well, so in Wizard of Ads, I'm a digital strategist. So that's my particular expertise. I'm really good at strategy. I'm really good at all the things on the internet. But I have partners who are media buyers, and they can tell you, like, how much is it going to cost to get adequate frequency and reach 10%, which is, kind of a minimum buy on radio in this market. And say, if we can hit 10% with a 3 frequency, this is radio media buyers speak, like, what's it going to cost? And they'll be like, well, in that market, it's going to be $150,000 or it's going to be $300,000 a year. And if that's not in the budget, then we have to look smaller. And, but I believe in that as much money as they can afford to put in creating a brand, that's what pays off in the long run. And that's what's paying off even more than ever as things move towards AI.
Right. And I want to go back just for a second to, I think, one of the very first things you said, which is about your website and your sort of presence on the web.
Yeah.
And as I think about that, whenever I hear of a new company or a new person or a new business, the first place I go to their website.
You Google them and then you click on their website.
And you get one shot at it.
Yes.
Right. If you go there and you're disappointed, right. If I go there and I'm disappointed, I'm not going back. I'm swiping left or right or however that works.
Swipe left.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your business. You've mentioned it a couple of times, but tell us the name of the business, sort of what you do, and tell me a little bit about how long you've been around and why you started it.
So I have been doing digital marketing since 1997. And I've been building websites, including my personal one, since 1995. So Wizard of Ads is the name of the partnership that I'm a member of. My company within it is called Wizard of Ads Online. And what I primarily do is manage digital strategy, websites, Google Ads, local service ads, Merchant Center, all things Google for the most part. But on the strategy side, I'm also overseeing and, being an ardent student of all the things that are changing, because keeping your eyes on what's happening, a month, 3 months, 6 months ahead of what's going on right now is really key when it comes to digital strategy, and is kind of one of my superpowers. So I've been doing web stuff for almost 30 years now, which is kind of crazy. I guess 31 years, man, that makes me feel old. But the general approach that I've had all along has been to give Google the things that Google really wants, which is become a business that has clear messaging, who has, clear, true authority, and is relevant, and do the technical things that make the website load fast, and all the tags, and speak the language of the computers as well as the humans. And really the tactics have changed, but that strategy is still what I'm doing today. If you know what the AI wants, and what the AI wants is unique content that answers the questions that people are asking Google, then you create that unique content that answers the questions that people are asking Google. And if the AI wants brands or companies that have authority, how do we get authority? Well, we do things that are notable. And if we do things that are notable, people take note. People take notice when, you go give away, you run a winter blanket or coat collection and give it away to all the people that are underprivileged in your area. It's really not that hard to get a newspaper article written about you when you're doing good things for your community. It's really hard when all you're doing is trying to make more money.
Right. And I had a company. I founded a company once, and we hired this is pre-web, but we hired a marketing guru, and they were able to get a story about us in national media, news outlets.
Yeah.
And that made us appear so much bigger than we really were.
For sure. Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But it also gave us instant credibility because we were on the,
100%.
7 o'clock evening news, right? The national evening
Yeah.
news. So all of a sudden, like, boom,
Boom,
people
you're
say,
on the stage. You're
you
real.
got these guys are real. Yeah, exactly. So your point's really well taken there. That is really, really critical for that credibility. And then in these days, I think that credibility, as you said earlier, makes you keep reappearing in searches.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
Right?
that's really the game right now is what can I do to have more authority, to
Yes.
get more recognition by doing things that deserve recognition. Like there's a lot of agencies that play the game of, how can we fake out Google? And
Mhm.
Google buys servers by the ton. I don't want to try and fake them out. They've got like thousands of people with PhDs in computer science trying to fight
Right.
people like that. I'll choose my battles more wisely than that.
And if they go in there and tweak one of the rules, all of a
And they
sudden you
do
can go from being there every day to not being there anymore. But
ever again.
if you have this foundational article written about you, I'll call it, then you're going to keep showing up because they won't make that go away.
Exactly. And that's the game is you play the long game and you get do things that will get you press, and you partner with local charities and you partner with other local businesses and you do good things. And when you do good things and you do fun things, people take notice, and like that's a whole lot more fun than trying to outsmart Google.
Yeah. Yeah. So say one more time where people can find you and your website name.
So you can find me at wizardofadsonline.com. And Wizard of Ads Online is the name of my company as a
Got it.
partnership within Wizard of Ads.
Very nice. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit on my questioning.
Yeah,
What made you sort of start the business?
this is a very good
talk
question.
about that journey.
So when I was 19 years old, I was 19. I came back from my study abroad. I spent a semester in England, and I had been working at the computer labs, like for the college I was attending, and they didn't have an opening for me when I came back from England. And I was kind of annoyed, and they put me to work at the registrar's office, and I was shredding papers, and I was doing clerical work, and I was like, yeah, this isn't really what I want to be doing. And one of my good buddies, Cameron, and I had talked about starting a computer IT kind of company at the time. So this is back in 97. And he and I had talked about this before, and I was like, hey, let's do this. Let's start an IT company. We can fix people's computers. We can go to their houses, and we can do a better job than the options people have. And so by May of that year, we'd started this company, and it was just running out of my apartment. And within a year or so, it got to the point where we were that $100,000 a year business, just as the two of us who are still in college, by the second year, we, I think, did about 110 grand. And we were both going to school full time. And when Cameron graduated, he went off to go work for, a government contracting company. And I had an offer to go work for a government contracting company myself. And I specifically remember a beautiful spring day, and I was talking on my 900 megahertz wireless phone to a customer. And I don't remember, we were probably charging like $65 an hour at the time, which is really cheap for today, and was even cheap for then for what we were doing. But I was a college student. Like I was comparing this to the $5 an hour my friends were making. Like this was really, really good money. And I was thinking, I'm going to pay myself like $35,000 or so this year, out of this company while I'm working essentially part-time. And my option, I could go work for this government contractor doing target recognition, software development, and fast track to management and waiving the wait time for the benefits. And, like it was a really good offer for the time for what my friends were getting. But I was like, I think I'll be able to pay myself $50,000 like in the following year or two for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm like, able to talk on the phone outside, walking around my yard, picking up sticks while I'm consulting. I'm like,
Right.
this is pretty
Right.
darn good. So I decided that I wanted to, at least for the time being, and then forever, chose to have the freedom and the challenge of running my own business over the stability of going to work for somebody else. And that lasted until I moved to Colorado in 2009. And when I got to Colorado and left one of my other partners running that business, I decided I didn't want to do IT anymore, because you're always on call and it's always an emergency. And I kind of decided, I was now 35 instead of 20, and I decided that I really didn't want that level of stress in my life, and that I just wanted to do web development and digital marketing from that point. And so for the last 16 years or so, that's really been my focus.
Yeah. Excellent. That's a great story. So if we have entrepreneurs listening to this who are thinking about starting a business, what's Vi's top 3 tidbits of information or tips on what you should do?
Well, I always look for the intersection of things that I'm good at, things that I enjoy, and things that people are willing to pay for.
Yes.
And so that triangulation of what are the things I really love to do, that I'm really good at, and people need. My dad was also entrepreneurial, and he told me as a kid, which also plays into my entrepreneurial journey, that you don't have to have a job, but you do have to have marketable skills. And if people don't want to pay for the thing you're good at, it doesn't really matter. That it's not a business, it's a hobby. And hobbies are great, but they're not going to make you a living. So, follow your curiosity and, find those things that fit that criteria of things you enjoy, because you're going to be spending a lot of your time. It's kind of like that old entrepreneur's joke of the best thing about being a business owner is you get to choose which 80 hours a week you're going to work.
Right.
Which I don't believe in working 80 hours a week, but you work hard when you're an entrepreneur, and you have to be doing things that you're good at and that you enjoy. Because for me, I know that accounting is not like, I'm good at finance, but accounting makes me want to gouge my eyes out, because it's this, the details in the numbers, and it's everything has to balance. And as soon as in any new business for me, I'm looking for how quickly can I outsource that function to someone who's really good at it and loves it, because I'm neither really good at it nor do I love it.
Very, very good.
So,
very good.
Look at those things that you're good at and you love, and look at those things that you're not good at and you don't love, and find somebody else to do the things that you don't love and you're not good at.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's great advice. So let's take yet another switch here in our conversation. Right. So you are also the 5-time Colorado State fiddling champion and 3-time national runner-up. At least that's what I read on Google.
Yep. That is true. True fact.
We got to talk about that. So the page is yours, or the stage is yours, I should say.
I grew up playing music, and so we had a family band, and that was just kind of what we did. On the weekends, most weekends, we'd go to my grandpa's house, and we'd have a half a day or a day that we'd spend with them. And my grandpa would play guitar, and my dad would play tenor banjo or mandolin, and sometimes guitar, and my brother would play bass, and I'd play the fiddle, and we'd all sing. And
wow. And
It
where
was
was this
this is in
geographically?
Loveland, Colorado. So I grew up in
Okay.
Greeley, and my grandparents lived in Loveland, and just a half-hour drive away. We spent a lot of time with them, and playing music was just kind of our family thing. And so, by the time I was 3, my dad had me on stage singing "I'm a Little Teapot" and "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star." I wrote my first song when I was 4, and
Wow.
it on the way to preschool. and since then, I remember as a kid, my dad told me that music would open up opportunities for me that I wouldn't understand, and it has absolutely been the truth. It's been a fact that, as an adult, I've met some super cool people and gotten to do some amazing things, both here and abroad, as a result of the music. And, I think music is a universal language that really connects us all. And, getting to create music, to release albums, to perform in bands it's just really fun. I love
Yeah.
it.
It's
It's what I
magical.
get to do. And I get paid I get paid money to do it too, which makes it
Yeah.
even doubly better.
So, I'm familiar with, in the late '60s, at the local high school, the Battle of the Bands.
Oh,
You know,
yeah. Yeah,
4
yeah,
or
yeah.
5 bands get together, and there's sort of a shootout.
Yeah.
But I got to think that sort of a national level competition kind of works a little bit differently. So, talk a little bit about how you get there, and then once you're there, how do you sort of approach it?
Well, that's a very good question. So the National Fiddle Contest is really fun. I went there for the first time when I was 15 or 16, and at the time I was winning a lot of contests in Colorado and Wyoming. So I thought I was pretty hot stuff. Me and my friend Cody we would be 1 and 2 everywhere, and she was a couple years older than me, so she usually won, and I usually came in second. But I thought I was pretty darn good. And I
Yeah.
went to the National Fiddle Contest, and I came in 56th out of 63 in my age category. And I was like a little shocked. And
Yeah.
I went home and I really woodshedded, and I was inspired by how good these other kids were. And just being among those people who were at such a high level inspired me to raise my level. And so the next year I came back and I took 31st. And then the next year I came back and I took 18th. And then I went off to college and really didn't compete much, for 15 years or so. But I showed up 2 or 3 times during that stint just to show up and see my friends, because these music friends you make at events like this, even if you only see them once every 10 or 15 years, they're still like some of my closest friends, because we share this common bond of this really obscure stuff of music.
Yes. Yes.
And so when I came back in my 30s and started competing again, because now I had a little more freedom and I was back in Colorado, I first tried to approach it the way I did when I was in high school. And when I was in high school, the structure of the competition is you play multiple rounds of 3 tunes. You play a breakdown, which is like a fast fiddle tune, and then you play a waltz, which is a pretty slower tune. And then you play a tune of your choice other than a breakdown or a waltz, which is usually something like a polka or a jig or a schottische or a rag or a swing tune. And you have 4 minutes to play these 3 songs. And these songs, typically, if you played the whole song, would be 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes each. So you have to abbreviate each of these songs. And so you kind of create custom arrangements of each of these tunes for the round. And so I had worked out these arrangements of these tunes, and I would play them exactly the same way when I was in high school. And, I had it all worked out. Well, when I came back as an adult, and I'd played in bands and stuff since then, it just felt really flat. And I didn't score badly. I was like, in the top 20 or 30%, but not enough that I was in the money. I wasn't in the top 5. And, that's where you want to be, is in the top 5. You got to be in the money. But I came back and I didn't have the fun, and I wanted it to be fun. So the next year I came back and I just let it rip. I didn't arrange anything. I just put my phone out as a timer and used that to know when to stop one song and move on to the next song. And I played whatever I felt like playing. And I ended up placing 8th that year, which was the highest I'd ever placed at the time. I was like, well, that's a change. And that was really fun.
Yeah.
And so that's been my approach since then. And, I've dialed it in, and I've prepared more than I did that year. And I've placed in the top 5 for each of the last 7 or 8 years. So it seems to be working.
Yes. Well, that's wonderful. What a great story. So, Vi, I'm going to start wrapping this up. We've been talking over a half hour. So here's my last question. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, there's one thought that I had about the preparing to be an entrepreneur question that you asked.
Yeah.
Which is, you need to think about how long you can hang in there when you go in there. And this could be that you need a spouse who has a day job, or it could be like you need to have enough to get you through at least 6 to 9 months, if not a year or two, to, depending on what your model is. But you need to have enough money because you're betting on yourself. I always love betting on myself, but you got to know what you're getting into. That your first 5 years, you'll probably make less than you made when you had a day job, if you're going from a day job. But after that, you'll probably make more, and you'll probably have a lot of fun, and you'll have more freedom and flexibility. But you've got to know that first year, I mean, when I kind of started over back in Colorado, I think that first year I may have dropped from like $90,000 down to 40, like it was a big drop in income. And, I was needing $3,000 a month to meet my basic expenses, so like I was not paying off the debt that I had. And, it was touch and go for that first year, but I knew what I was getting into. And, know that it's going to be hard, and you're going to have to work hard, and you might need support. And don't be afraid, like have those conversations beforehand with your spouse or significant other who may be helping support you in this process. Because if you don't, you might have a rude awakening. And I think it's really important to know that, it's the best thing I've ever done. I've never had a day job. I've not regretted it for a minute. Once you have had some success in this field and you've seen the freedom and the joy that you can have, I couldn't see it any other way in my life. But, it's not easy. And only one of my clients can fire me at a time, so, like I have 90 bosses instead of one, and I can only lose one of those at a time. It's a very odd thing even to have 2 clients who would part ways in the same, general period of time. So, there's a perception that as an entrepreneur, you have less stability, but I think that often entrepreneurs have more stability than somebody who has a day job and one ticked off manager can end their career.
Right. Vi, that was great advice. A great way to wrap up this podcast. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you, Bela. It's been my pleasure. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and talk with you.
Yeah, same here.
Bela, really interesting interview. Quite the character.
Yeah, he was. I really enjoyed my conversation with Vi. I think he had some really good tips there about kind of thinking about your business. And, like we mentioned in the interview, 40 years ago, a small business only had to worry about advertising in the newspaper and the yellow pages. That was it. And now it's really, really changed. It's gotten much more complex. And I think one of his great pieces of advice was that your website is the world's window into your business. That's the first place people go. So as soon as they hear about your business, they're going to type into their favorite search engine, yourbusiness.com, and they're going to go check out your website. So it's absolutely critical to have a really good, informative website. So I think that was really good. I think the other interesting piece that we chatted about was that you need to sort of have a strategy about how you're going to do this. And what I mean by that is, how do you want people to perceive your business when they go to your website? What messages are they going to get? Not just what products you're going to sell, but how are they going to think about your business? How are they going to perceive it? Are they going to perceive it as selling products that are super high end? Are they going to perceive it as, the place to go for really good bargains? Are they going to perceive it as the highest technology available? Whatever your metric is that you want to sort of differentiate yourself on, make sure that message comes through and it's part of your strategy. And then I think the other piece is you need tactics to sort of implement that strategy. What are the words that you're going to use to communicate all of this? And how are you going to communicate it? What are the various different channels that you're going to use to get this message out? So I think those things were sort of the key takeaways for me. What did you get out of it, Mike?
Yeah, Bela, and just building on what you said, one of the things that I've noticed in my kind of career as an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneurship educator, is I can't underestimate the importance of getting some good outside advice on your website or your landing page, because everything that you said is absolutely true. I agree 100%. But what I've noticed is when you've immersed yourself in something so emotional and personal, like the small business that you borrowed money for, you've invested all these hours, or even something that you're just kind of half doing as a side gig, right? But it can blind you to how new or potentially new customers see you or see your business, your website, your brand. It appears obvious to you because you've been immersed in this for however long you've been working on this business. But something that might be obvious to you will likely be unclear or non-obvious to somebody on the outside looking in. And that's your potential customer, right? So your job as an entrepreneur is first to come up with a valuable product or service that customers are willing to pay for. And that's hard enough, right? To see a gap in the market and to fill it. But then to communicate that, the part that you are talking about, that to communicate that concisely and memorably to potential customers is even harder. And most of us aren't trained in marketing, right? We're not great writers, or we're not wordsmiths. So many businesses fail, and we've both seen this, and we've both been a part of this, right? That they might have a great product or service, like it really is. It solves a problem, and it's there's value there, but they either can't reach potential customers, right? The customer acquisition costs are too high, or even when they reach those customers and they spend that money and that time to reach them, they can't convince them to try the product or service out because they either don't understand what it does or they don't know how to get it. Someone like Vi can really give you clear-eyed guidance on how to do this, because again, you're so wrapped up in it that it's hard to see what, and I think you were talking about, make it so your grandpa would understand it. Great advice. And having somebody outside to give you that perspective with fresh eyes is really important. So that's kind of one of the things that I've learned, is that having people from the outside kind of really look at this and say, is it clear what you're offering and how to access it? And that's super, super important. And like you said, I think so many people mess that up, not on purpose, but just because we don't see it. We're so caught in up in it that we don't get it. The second part I liked about the interview is the story about how Vi decided to become an entrepreneur and how he built his businesses. And that was an interesting story. So, the main message obviously was, online marketing for small businesses, but I thought it was a cool story in and of itself. How do you view the startup story that Vi told and how relevant it is for listeners?
Yeah, I thought it was great as well, Mike. And I had a couple of key takeaways from that part of our conversation. I thought he had some really good advice. He said, figure out what you're good at, figure out what you enjoy, and what do other people want? So the intersection of those three things. What am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? And what do other people want and are willing to pay for? Right? Can I do I think that's is it called a Venn diagram, Mike, if I remember correctly? The intersection
the three
of those
circles
things?
and
The three circles?
I think you're right on that.
Yeah. So, or as some people call it, a Zen, Z-E-N diagram.
Ooh.
So what's the intersection of those three things? And I'd never looked at it that way. And I thought that was sort of good advice. And then the second piece of that is take the things that you don't enjoy doing and or that you're not good at and find someone else to do them. Don't suck up your own emotional energy and your time. And because time is the most important thing you have when you're running a small business. Figure out what you're not good at. Figure out what you don't enjoy. Job shop those out to other people. Take the things you like. Take the things you're good at. And how does that intersect with what people want and are willing to pay for? That to me was, quite frankly, the key takeaway for me from my whole conversation with Vi.
Love it. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, this was one of these podcast interviews. I think that we had really good takeaways for the guests in terms of things they can do to actively make their social media better, something practical, but also a cool story that's motivational. So a win-win. What do you think? Time to wrap it up?
Yep. Let's call it a day, Mike.
Great. So thanks for yet another interesting entrepreneurial interview, Bela. And listeners, thanks for joining us. Hope you found this episode interesting and thought-provoking like we did. And as always, if you have questions about what we've talked about, hey, get in touch with us. Our email is bela.and.mike@gmail.com.
And hey, finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, please hit that like button on your podcasting app. And you can now also find the podcast on YouTube. And if you know of someone that would make a good guest for the show, let us know. So that's it for today's episode. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. See you all soon.
Sounds great, Bela. And from over here in Münster, Germany, auf Wiedersehen. See you next time.